Good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. This is BRNAM for Monday, February 5th, 2024. And our top story today, helping veterans who are struggling with depression and anxiety. And joining me now to discuss this and a lot more, Greg Boudreau is a board member with Kevin Song. Greg, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
I'm so happy to be here. Sad topic, but thank you so much for your interest in Kevin's Song, and especially in the topic of suicide and particularly veteran suicide issues.
Yeah, and this is something, I want to get into the details of that in a moment, but tell us a little bit about, myself and the audience a little bit about Kevin's Song, what the organization stands for, and I know it's around suicide prevention, but let's go into more detail about the organization.
Well, I'm very proud to say I was invited to be a member of the board of directors of Kevin's Song. It's a 501c3 that was established by Gail and John Urso, a couple from Grosse Pointe, Michigan. They lost their son Justin 10 years ago and had significant difficulty finding resources and support for those that are newly bereaved by suicide. And they took it upon themselves to establish Kevin's Song. Their son Kevin was a musician and an artist, and they picked it's a lovely song, by the way, and created the 501c3. So for the last 10 years, they've been growing support here in Southeast Michigan for suicide prevention and also for support of those who are bereaved by suicide loss. So we call it survivor of suicide loss.
Let's talk about suicide, because my understanding of the general statistics, suicide has gone up significantly, especially among younger people. But where is it with our military veterans, those that protect and serve both domestically and abroad? Is that seeing an increase? Are we seeing an increase among our veterans?
The number of veteran suicides increased dramatically over the past 10 years. The statistics that we have, Jeff, lag over a year because the information has to go from the city to the county to the state to the feds. But nonetheless, in 1922, there was a slight decrease in the number of suicide by veterans. However, we're still at 20 veterans per day taking their own life. It's a horrific number.
It absolutely is. It's absolutely horrific. Do we have an understanding of, in veterans, people that serve in the military, especially in combat, there's post-traumatic stress disorder. They're faced with so many potentially horrific events, and it puts them in such difficult situations. But do we have a root cause for why this number continues to spin out of control?
There is no common acceptance of a root cause, Jeff. That's an excellent question. I can share some thoughts and opinions from my own perspective, perhaps. The resources available to veterans vary dramatically across the country. So that would be issue number one. Issue number two, the means for suicide are very readily available. And firearms account for more than half of the Michigan suicides, and in men, it's 91% of the suicides are by firearm. So there's a gun issue that is not being addressed. The reluctance of veterans to seek out the services available to them is also an issue. There's an inertia. And for members of your audience who are familiar with depression or mental illness, I mean, some days it's a challenge to get out of bed and brush your teeth, let alone go down to the VA and go through the process of going through a support system. So inertia, I guess, is one of the items, and the other is the, if I can use the phrase machismo, that I'm a rough, tough military veteran, and I can, well, the SEALs say embrace the suck. So I can deal with this. Well, the reality is, unfortunately, most can't. And we just need to create a better culture of acceptance for mental health and depression support. And we need to stop the stigma. The last, if I may, I know I'm carrying on, but I have one other item. Again, my personal opinion that the emotional support services offered within the military, there is a suspicion by the members that any use of mental health services is going to limit their career progression. So they would rather suffer in silence than risk future promotion.
Yeah, and you're not. Please feel free to talk as long as you want. I think this is a fascinating conversation for a lot of reasons. Greg, before we go to a commercial break, and I want to talk about some solutions on the back end and what we can do. But in this last question, suicide not only impacts the person who commits suicide, but it impacts those that are left behind. And can you talk, if you will, a little bit about support that's available for caregivers, family members, people that loved ones that are left behind, because they can suffer from almost like a PTSD, post-traumatic stress from the individual that leaves the planet.
You're exactly correct, Jeff. There is a huge impact on society as a whole. The statistics tell us 37 people are impacted by each suicide. In our audience here today, 1 in 20 are thinking of suicide. 1 in 10 of your audience have, within the old phrase, 6 degrees of separation, 1 in 10 have a direct connection to a family member or a close friend or colleague who has suicided. However, most people don't speak up and take advantage of the support networks. There are a large number of not-for-profits that have been formed across the country. And there's the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention that has a website which has listings of local resources. Here at Kevin's Song, I mentioned we're in Southeast Michigan, but we have a video session once a week for survivors of suicide support. And survivors of suicide loss. And we also have an in-person session, but the Zoom session, the first Wednesday of every month, we have people from all over the country that have participated in the group. So if you would, anyone who has had a suicide loss, we encourage them to contact us. We will help you get a direction, or go to the American Foundation or your local mental health association, or just use the new crisis hotline 988, and you can ask for help on that line. You don't need to be in a suicide ideation. That's a fancy word for thinking about killing yourself. You don't have to be in that mode to use 988. And there's also 211, which is funded by the United Way, and they will help with identifying mental health resources, both for depression or for counseling and support after a suicide.
Well, Greg, I need to take a very quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about some solutions. What can government do? What can local agencies do? You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms? Especially for the smaller businesses. I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network. Greg, thanks so much for staying with us. Really appreciate you hanging around for a very important topic in segment number 2 this morning.
Glad to be here.
You talked about some of the inertia in segment 1, that kind of the rationale as to why this may be occurring at such a high rate. And one of the things you mentioned was people don't want to acknowledge. And so there's a need to change the culture in terms of health, acceptance of health, mental health issues. How do we do that? Is it simply by doing shows like this, the work that Kevin Song is doing, just getting more people aware that you can be a big, tough soldier, male or female, but still have challenges?
Well, it's just as you stated. We as a society, you, me, and the other 360 million people in this country, need to become more accepting of the need for mental health support. That frankly, every one of us, everyone listening, at some point could use some support. And I'll use the National Hockey League. I'm a passionate hockey fan. The National Hockey League has a player assistant. Well, Nashville Predators, actually.
That's interesting. Okay.
Our granddaughter married Roman Yossi, the captain of the Predators. So, okay. Roman is just a wonderful man, and we enjoy that team. And I was brainwashed as a child and support the Toronto Maple Leafs, but I may need some emotional support for that as well. It's been 1967.
Yeah, absolutely. But you were going to bring up the player care assistance program that the NHL has.
Yes, the National Hockey League has a player assistance program, and it's an interesting evolution because the program was originally called a substance abuse program. Now it has expanded to mental health. And for those who read different articles of the NHL, players have talked about their struggles with mental illness, depression, thoughts of suicide. Now that mental health aspect is being addressed along with and in addition to substance abuse. So the organizations, I'm not as familiar with football, but I trust and hope they have a similar type of program. So where our younger generation is seeing role models publicly coming out and making statements, as Patrick Laine did yesterday, a player with Columbus, saying that I needed to take a break for my mental health. It sends a positive reinforcement. And that's one element of hope I'd like to share with your audience here today, Jeff, is that the younger demographics, and I'll say 30 and under, are much, much more comfortable in talking about mental health. And that's one of the big large initiatives at Kevin Song, is to get into schools and say it's okay to ask. And now there's little wristbands and different programs where we're going into the military community and saying, and the veteran community, it's okay to ask for help.
Yeah.
As long as we show we're willing to hold their request uh, in a supportive space, then each and every one of us can help somebody along the line.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point, and part of that is understanding that I think people are willing to accept uh, people who have challenges. I think if you look at your own life, we all have challenges every day. Sometimes it's hard for all of us to get up and put our pants on and go to work because we have the other things that are bothering us. So I think if you can relate that to other people going through something, I think it leads to more acceptance. Last question, Greg. I want to ask you about what government can do, and by government, you talked about what Kevin Song and other great organizations doing. But let's talk about the federal government. So we got the Department of Veterans Affairs, but also there must be local agencies in states, local municipalities to support suicide, depression. So let's start with government. What can the government do to support veterans, but also those that are thinking of suicide?
Well, I'm encouraged that the federal government passed a piece of legislation in 2023 dealing specifically with veterans in the first year after they separate from the military. And that first year of leaving a very structured, organized, detailed, scripted environment and going out into the civilian world where your whole support system, your comrades, just everything on a daily basis in the military it's a predictable environment, I guess what I'm going to say, other than of course when you're in a danger zone. But
Yeah.
Going out into the civilian world, it's wide open, and none of the rules that you're familiar with for how many ever years you've been in the military are still in place. Your experience is not understood. Your capabilities are not translated directly into employment opportunities. That was the case with my son, Ryan. He was head of a combat engineering platoon, had millions of dollars worth of equipment, and this large number of men that were in his group. Yet when he went out into the military, they said, well, here, you could drive a forklift. Now, that just doesn't track with where they were in their life and the transition that they need to make. So the specific legislation sets out criteria and responsibilities for the VA to follow up at least 3 times with a veteran who has just been released. And that is going to increase the participation because it overcomes that inertia that I spoke to just before the break. If we reach out and show care, show concern, show attention, we're more likely to get people to participate. I'm in the state of Michigan, as we mentioned, and the state of Michigan has put a significant amount of money and passed several bills that support more counseling programs and support in schools. Unfortunately, that's a result of a mass shooting, but nonetheless, it's putting more resources for mental health support into the schools. There are specific programs for veteran support. Each of the counties has a veteran affairs officer, and the county mental health departments are also receiving additional funding to put counselors in place to provide additional support. And the 988 number that I mentioned, this was a big change. If you're in crisis, are you going to remember 1-800, yada, yada. But 988, it's easy, it's simple. I would share with anybody in your audience here that when you do get to 988, you are going to be routed to the resource that's best equipped to deal with you. So they'll ask, are you a veteran? Are you? And there may be little pauses. It's not that you're being put on hold. It's that you're being routed to the specialist that can do the best job of taking care.
Well, it sounds like it's a start, and I don't want to minimize the work, but there's still a lot of work to be done. There's clearly work that government can do, and then organizations like Kevin's song. Greg, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to having you back on the program again very soon.
Thank you, Jeff.
And that wraps up this episode of BRNAM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to, drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the latest curated news and lifestyle, wellness, finance, tech, so much more all in one place, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Want to search our archives, check out our latest content, then visit our website. We're back again tomorrow with another great edition of BRNAM. We'll have a very special guest. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes. Now is your opportunity to co-create content around any topic on the First Lifestyle and Wellness Network. Reach a global audience through our platform and co-own exclusive branded content. All of our programs are available on demand and also as audio-only podcasts, so you can take us on the go. Broadcast Retirement Network, available anytime, anywhere, and on any device.